Welcome back to the Characters of Boxing and Beyond podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to preserving the history of boxing and its larger-than-life characters, and is brought to you by Clear Contender Media. Now, here's your host, Casey Kid History Callanan.
Greetings, podcast fans. I want to welcome you back to a very special edition of the Characters of Boxing and Beyond podcast. My name is Casey Kid History Callanan. I'm recording this podcast one night removed from the incredible show put on by Matchroom Boxing USA here in southern New England. You had your boy Demetrius Andrade from Providence, Rhode Island, taking on Poland's Maciej Soliski. There was some great action in this fight in the first round. I think Andrade really fed off the home crowd in that first round. It was electric for the first round. Fans were on their feet chanting his nickname, Boo Boo. They were going crazy, and Andrade was feeding off that energy, an electric atmosphere, to his favor. And in that first round, if you'll watch the highlights, Andrade knocks down Maciej Soliski, and it was a clean knockdown, no doubt about it. Boo Boo hit him square, and Soliski is a tough fighter. Obviously, only loss coming to Daniel Jacobs. Proceeded to get up after that knockdown, and the rest of the fight, Andrade won on points. He clearly won the fight. What's next for Andrade? They're saying Triple G. They're saying Canelo. Certainly possible given that he's working under Eddie Hearn. I'm so proud of the city of Providence, Rhode Island, for coming out in full force last night. It was the first time that there's been a major fight in Providence since I believe the 90s or 80s when Vinny Pazienza was packing that place in. I had an incredible evening. Let me tell you, if you're a fight fan, you need to be on, I recommend going to ESPN.com and going to their boxing section and looking at their schedule. I think ESPN does the best kind of job. I'm sure there's other outlets out there that do a great job. Again, I don't have any affiliation with any media outlet, so I'm just going to tell you what I think is the best way to go about it. But I think ESPN.com does the best job of showing you what the upcoming events are in boxing that are quite notable. And they show some events as well on that schedule that maybe aren't as huge mainstream. So I think if you go on ESPN.com and you go to their boxing section and you click on the schedule portion, you're going to find what bigger upcoming bouts that are scheduled throughout the world. And I recommend going there and seeing if there's an event near you, because going to see a boxing event live in person right now is something incredibly special. Let's assume we're all fans of big fans of the sport if you're listening to this podcast, and the value that you get for a ticket is incredible. So I'm from Providence. I'm born here. I live in Baltimore now. I'm recording this obviously in New England right now. You might hear some of the background noises. There might be a seagull or two. There might be some, nice sounds coming off the bay here. My parents do live on the water here in the beautiful South Coast region of Massachusetts. We're right outside Fall River. It's essentially a suburb of Providence. So it was really easy to get to the fight last night. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect location for an event. And if you're a fight fan, get out to these events so the doors open at 5. I went with my cousin Meg, our friend Bren, and my dad, and we had 4 tickets next to each other. The face value on these tickets is incredibly low for what you get out of this fight experience. So we got there early. Meg and Bren are big into the UFC. They love to go to the cage fights here in Lincoln, Rhode Island. And I knew as soon as that Andrade card popped up that they would be the ones to go with, and of course my dad as well. And we just had an incredible evening. We got there pretty much as the doors open. And if you're a fight fan, that is your Christmas, because folks, there's no one really in there. You probably could count under 100 people. That's probably a liberal estimate, a generous estimate to say there was like 100 people in there. who weren't employees of the either the fight or the state of Rhode Island Athletic Commission, or people that weren't working the fight. There was probably about 100 people when we walked in. You can hear the gloves snapping off. It's an incredible atmosphere. It's hard to put into words how fun it is to get to an event early like that. Meg is a Providence police officer, so we knew all the security guards in the building. It was really special. We were talking about, stories of Meg on the police force, and it just was a special atmosphere. I mean, everyone who was, as the place started to fill up, everyone was a fight fan. I mean, you knew that these people, and you could just overhear conversations that everyone either was a boxer themselves or a huge observer to the game. I was just overhearing conversations, and everyone in the building seemed to know boxing inside and out. And that's fun because you could turn around, and for my first time, really, in my day-to-day, I don't run into people that know boxing inside and out. So this is kind of my time to see my people, for lack of a better term. These are my people. So, I'll turn around, we'll joke around about whatever it is in the fight game. Very esoteric, very we talk things that are very in the weeds, very we're talking shop about boxing, and not just the sport and the politics behind it, not just the great fighters out there, but we're talking the X's and O's. We're talking about the left hooks, the right, when the guy switches to southpaw. That's what makes it so special, in my opinion. So in the Joseph Parker fight that you might have seen live on DAZN, he fought a Australian guy fighting out of Queensland, Australia, who was of Samoan descent, Alex Leapai. Leapai has fought Vladimir Klitschko, and Leapai was getting really beaten up, and it was getting to the point where Leapai wasn't defending himself at all. He was literally playing almost no defense in this fight against Joseph Parker, and it was starting to worry me. I don't like to see a guy as much and as tough as I respect how tough Leapai is. I mean, he was taking blows that would have knocked down maybe just about any other fighter in the game right now. Besides, I don't know, I would think of all the heavyweights, Andy Ruiz right now has the best chin, but I don't think a lot of these chins have been tested. Tyson Fury, you can make the argument, also has maybe the best chin as well. But Leapai was just not going down in this Joseph Parker fight, and Joseph Parker was overwhelmingly winning this fight. I thought as early as some of the middle rounds it could have been stopped by the ref. So what happens when an absolute warrior like Alex Leapai takes the ring is they have a skill. They almost specialize in being able to absorb punishment. And Leapai was not going down, and it was obvious the corner wasn't going to stop it either. So at that point, you have to have either the fight doctor or the ref step in to save the fighter from himself. And I thought it probably should have been stopped earlier than it was. I believe in the 10th round, the ref just kind of waved his hands after yet another barrage of Joseph Parker punches. The ref finally stepped in and waved his hands, and there was some boos in the crowd, and I immediately jumped up and applauded it. I said that is a stop that should have came 2 or 3 rounds ago, but you know what? I'll take it. So I'll take it when you can get it, because in my opinion, and I turned, and there was the guys behind me were like, "Oh, come on!" And then I talked to him. I said, "Guys, Alex Leapai, he is an absolute warrior. He has nothing left to prove out there. The guy has, let him go home to his family. Now, he's not going to take home any less money. This, to me, is a perfect end to this fight, because Leapai doesn't have to, he's not a quitter. There's no controversy because the corner didn't have to stop it." I said, that's a perfect stop. If anything, it came way too late, but the guys behind me, they they were saying, well, these guys are like gladiators, but I think after we were talking, they saw my point, because let's be honest, folks, there is life outside of boxing. In the moment, a lot of these warrior type fighters who just will not quit. I'm thinking of like Greg Haugen right now, who just takes a pummeling from Julio Cesar Chavez in Mexico City. There's these guys that just will not go down. We see it all the time. I mean, if you watch enough undercards, if you watch enough boxing, you're going to see this. It's a regular occurrence in the sport, because you'll put a guy out there who maybe as a promoter is going to give the fans a lot of rounds, but he's probably not going to produce enough offense at any one point to have a chance to win the fight. And in this Joseph Parker fight, the opponent, Alex Leopai, the only problem wasn't that he wasn't firing enough offense off, which he really wasn't. He didn't have much offense at all, but he wasn't playing hardly any defense. He wasn't moving his head at all. He was taking a barrage of punishment, and thank goodness the referee finally had seen enough, and they ended that fight. So that's Joseph Parker's first fight under the Matchroom promotion, and I'll say that that's kind of what the MO has been for not just Matchroom, but also ESPN Top Rank. When they sign a new fighter now, it seems like the MO, the modus operandi, is you get this guy in there, you give him a first fight under the new promotion is almost like a cakewalk. It's almost like a gimme. And, as a fan, is that something that I want to see? Absolutely not. But as a businessman, I understand it. I want to look at things from everyone's shoes, right? So I'm not here. I am a huge fight fan, and this podcast is the voice of the fan, but I also want to be completely objective and use as much empathy in my discussions as I possibly can. So I do want to look at this through the eyes of Eddie Hearn, through the eyes of a Bob Arum, through the eyes of an Al Heyman. Let's look at the entire pieces of the puzzle here, because there's so many moving parts in the business of boxing. So I want to explore everything. So if I'm looking at this through Eddie Hearn's eyes, I'm going to pretend I'm Eddie Hearn. Now, I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the one who's taken all the risk on. I'm the one who's brought this fight to Providence. I'm the one who's responsible for signing the checks of all the people that are there working the arena. I'm taking on all the risk. And as Vince McMahon, who runs the WWE, once famously said to Bob Costas, I am an entrepreneur. I'm what makes this world go round. So I want to look at it from these promoters' eyes as well, and because there is definite merit to looking at it through the eyes of these guys, and it'll help us understand how these decisions are made. Now, as a fight fan, you still might not like that. I'm a fight fan. I don't really like it, but I think it's worthy to look at it from all angles. I understand why Joseph Parker was brought out there to fight someone who absolutely had no chance of winning. So now Joseph Parker gets a nice stoppage victory under his belt. What's next for Joseph Parker? He has said Dillian White, he wants to avenge his losses to Dillian White, and he wants to avenge his loss to Anthony Joshua. Is he going to get that Joshua fight? That's going to depend on what the heck happens in the rematch between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. So much is riding on that rematch. I think that rematch is going to determine everything. What the future of the heavyweight division rides on that, in all honesty, in that fight, I think. So I think Joseph Parker has a bright future. He is very technically sound. He's a gigantic heavyweight, and we are in the age of gigantic heavyweights. There's a couple guys on the outside looking in right now. There's an individual from the Ukraine right now named Alex Usyk. He's 13-0. He is a cruiserweight who is expected to move up to heavyweight. He might have already fought a few heavyweight bouts, but he's the one smaller heavyweight to keep your eye on, I think. The rest of the division, it's all about kind of these super heavyweights right now. They're gigantic individuals like Tyson Fury, like Anthony Joshua, and certainly like Joseph Parker. I really think there's a lot to look forward to. This second tier of heavyweights, your Dillian Whites, your Joseph Parkers, Alex Usyk maybe. These guys are are gonna, at least one of them is gonna break through and challenge the big four right now of AJ, Ruiz, Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury. I think one of those is gonna break out, and it could be Joseph Parker. The future is bright for this kid, so a lot to look forward to there. Good to see a huge card like that take place in Southern New England with a lot of local fighters on the card. I enjoyed watching Mark DeLuca, a native of, I think he's fighting out of Whitman, Massachusetts, which is right near Brockton, Massachusetts, which is the home of Rocky Marciano. Obviously, a huge fighting community in that part of Massachusetts. They believe they call it the South Shore region, south of Boston. And I enjoyed watching Mark DeLuca go at it on the undercard against Brandon Brewer. The super welterweights, they went 10 rounds, and Brewer was one of he looked like Conor McGregor. He's a redheaded guy from New Brunswick, Canada, that east coast of Canada, came down to fight in Providence, and I really enjoyed that on the undercard. DeLuca is a Marine, ex-Marine, and he's jacked. I mean, he's got a lot of size on him, and as you know, the more you bulk up, the harder it is to be great with your conditioning. So I think the future is very bright for DeLuca. I really love his story as a Marine, as this tough dude from Boston, and he's a character. He said something that was hilarious after he beat Brandon Brewer. He goes, if it wasn't for you fight fans, I'd probably be out teaching a Tai Bo class somewhere. Of course, Tai Bo is the exercise videos that came out in the 2000s, 1999, that time period, with starring Billy Blanks, and they were just like exercise videos. It was one of those exercise fads at a time. So definitely a character. He's got the thick Boston accent. He's fighting out of Whitman, Massachusetts. I'm excited for this kid. I think he's got to get more opportunities. He's fighting under the Murphy's Boxing promotion. Murphy's Boxing is out of Boston. It is, if you've heard of the band Dropkick Murphys, if you're familiar with the I'll let you decide if it's an incredible movie. I enjoy it. The movie The Departed that came out in like 2008, the soundtrack includes the Dropkick Murphys. I'm shipping up to Boston. Those guys, huge fight fans. The Dropkick Murphys, they actually started promoting fights. So Mark DeLuca is signed under the Murphys Boxing brand. There's going to be a lot of fights taking place in the new Encore Boston Harbor Hotel that just opened up right next to, I think it's in Everett, Mass. So it's right next to Boston. Expect to see a lot of Murphy's Boxing cards in that hotel venue. Expect to see a lot of Murphy's Boxing cards continue to take place in things like Springfield, Massachusetts, which is in western Massachusetts, and also, you'll see them at Foxwoods. I'm excited about Murphy's Boxing and the future of boxing there. I think those guys, they know Boston through and through, and hopefully Mark DeLuca gets another big shot and a contender, because I love this dude. I think he's a great story. And Brandon Brewer, shout out to Brandon Brewer. He came down from New Brunswick. He's I think he comes from like a long line of lumberjacks in his family. He looks like a lumberjack, and the kid was tough as nails to come here and have to endure fans chanting USA, USA. Not trying to not make it a friendly environment for Brandon Brewer. Obviously, DeLuca's the bazooka. They call him Mark the Bazooka DeLuca. He's fighting in his backyard. So tip of the cap to Brandon Brewer and Mark DeLuca. Those two went at it for a very solid 10 rounds. I also want to give a shout out to Providence's own Shelly Vincent. Shelly Vincent, who has fought one of the top women fighters maybe ever. If you remember her rivalry with Heather the Heat Hardy. Heather Hardy is a MMA, very popular MMA UFC fighter. And Heather the Heat Hardy and Shelly Vincent had a great rivalry. You can go, I'm sure, watch some of their fights together and show some respect to Shelly Vincent, a native of, she's from New London, Connecticut, but fights out of Providence, Rhode Island. She is so tough. She's could take a barrage of punches, and definitely did in her fight on the undercard of last night's bout. She she had a real tough bout against a woman from Brazil, Simone da Silva. And Da Silva showed some incredible heart. I do think Shelley did win the fight. It went to the cards. Shelley, you could tell, this woman from Brazil, Da Silva, was throwing everything at Shelley, and she could take a pounding, and she got enough offense back in there that I think she won the fight. Shelley Vincent, certainly one of the greatest fighters to ever come out of Providence. Very proud that she's fighting under the Providence banner, and she's out of Peter Manfredo Senior's camp. I wish all the best luck in the world to Shelley Vincent. She has made us proud as Rhode Islanders, and 40 years old, I do think she's making the right decision hanging them up now. I wouldn't be shocked if somewhere down the line Shelley Vincent decides to return to the ring. And thank you, Shelley, for all that you have, brought to this sport. She actually ended up sitting a couple rows in front of us at the fight, gave her a nice fist bump and told the champ congrats. Really special night for her to end her career at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island, the site of last night's Demetrius Andrade versus Marcek Soliski fight. And that's what we're talking about now on this very special edition of the Characters of Boxing and Beyond podcast. I had to flip on the mics and tell you about last night with my dad, with my cousin Meg, with our friend Bren. We just had the most incredible evening. And, the Jimenez versus Cal Yaffe fight. Yaffe is he's the biggest, longest running British champion. He certainly, I believe, did enough to win it. I don't think there was any sort of controversy in the decision going to him. It's cool that Hearn put that fight on there for the fans in Providence to see a world champion. At the end, he got booed because people don't think, and I think he was booed for this reason, that he didn't do enough to go for a knockout. So again, I want to look at everything from all angles. And if you're in his shoes, you're winning on the cards. There's no real benefit to his career to go for a knockout and risk getting knocked out himself. Now, as a fan, I still think I would love to see someone that cares enough about their legacy or about being a boxer to go for the knockout and to not let let there be any doubt that they didn't win the fight and to go for the knockout. I think a true champion might try to go that route. But again, anytime you get into a boxing ring, you're putting your life on the line, and I'm not going to second guess anyone who wants to take their foot off the gas pedal in terms of going for a knockout just so they can win that night on points and live to see another day. As a fan, I want to see you go for the knockout, but I understand looking at it from all angles, including the fighter who needs to look out for his future and what's next down the line. I understand why he did not, as much as it does disappoint me as a fan. Just to recap the last fight of the night, Andrade came out there to the home crowd. I believe the announced attendance was close to 7,200. In the Dunkin' Donuts Center, home of the Providence Bruins and the Providence College Friars. As much as I love Rhode Island and as much as I'm back there, I haven't had a chance to be in that building since 1996. I believe it went back that far when I saw a Providence College game versus Long Island, LIU, Brooklyn. So it was cool to be back in the arena. They've obviously renovated it a lot since then. I think it's the perfect size arena for Providence, and I enjoyed the heck out of it hosting the Andrade fight. Andrade, I believe, did win the fight fair and square. I thought the knockdown was the deciding factor. Andrade's style is obviously unorthodox. A lot of people who weren't familiar with him, I saw on Twitter commenting that they couldn't believe some of the style that he does. He goes southpaw. He has a huge wide stance, and he's really looking to counterpunch. I've heard Teddy Atlas compare his style to Floyd Mayweather, which is primarily a defensive style that fans do not like. It's not a fan-friendly come-at-you style, but Andrade he should have been, maybe like an Olympic champion. He's got a huge pedigree, And that's going to be the style that you better get used to, because that's how he's going to fight fights. And this style is probably going to have got him a fight against Triple G. And that's where everyone can put their money where their mouth is. And we'll see, Demetrius Andrade, I really think the next fight is going to determine what his legacy will be, how important he really was to this really crowded division of middleweights that he has himself a part of. Where will he wind up? Where will his legacy, when we look back on this time, be? And we're going to find out, I really hope, in his next bout, if he can get a sniff at Triple G or Canelo. He might even fight someone like Daniel Jacobs next, and then if he can win that fight, set up a really big pay-per-view-esque fight. So I think he proved that he belongs here with that win last night. And boy, does he do it for Rhode Island. We wouldn't have a chance to have had such a special night if it wasn't for Demetrius Andrade. So I am all in, and I am a huge fan of him, and I look forward to seeing what is next. So for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a picture of me with Eddie Hearn on clearcontender.com/podcast. I posted it with this episode. It was really a special moment. I was talking with one of the security guards and my cousin Meg. We were talking about an old story of when she was on the Providence police force, and I was also talking with the security guard who Meg knew about this story, and we were having fun, laughing and talking about it between fights. And then lo and behold, who's walking behind us is in his suit, no tie. He had the suit with the button down on underneath, was Eddie Hearn. The reason that we were all there, the man who put his, who puts it all on the line from a financial standpoint to make these nights happen. And as someone who really studies business, as someone who really appreciates the business side of things, there is enough there that I really, really respect. And I was so thrilled to have this moment where I turn around and, Eddie Hearn's there. He was with one other guy who he's with the whole night. I didn't recognize who this individual was. He looked like he was an ex-fighter. But I turned around and said, "Hey, Eddie," smile. I said, "Eddie, can I get a picture?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." So Meg took the camera and took my phone and snapped a picture of me and Hearn. And I just thanked him for coming to Rhode Island. He was, doing a million different things. And the fact that he could take that time just to, snap a pic with me, it was really cool. I didn't see too many people go up to him either, because in the States he's not obviously as big a household name as he is in the UK. So that was a special moment. This was at the very beginning of the night, when the arena was pretty much empty as well. So, folks, if you get there early enough, anything can happen. You take the time to try and get there early. I understand it is hard, but it's something, if you're going to a fight, again, I recommend going on ESPN.com, checking out the schedules, finding when the next fight is in your area, find out when the doors open, make your plans in advance, plan out your day, try to get there early. I got there early, got a chance to meet Eddie Hearn. I thanked him for coming to Rhode Island. I would have loved to have talked to that guy for, 2 hours and picked his brain, but it was so cool to get a chance to meet him. It's a story I'll always be able to have with me. I've met a lot of cool people in boxing, Freddie Roach, Teddy Atlas, Mikey Garcia, just guys who I've ran into, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., just guys who I've ran into over the years. And this was definitely one of the more special moments, getting a chance to meet Hearn and shake his hand, thank him for coming to Rhode Island, and let him go on his way. I thought it was a great moment. Whenever you meet celebrities or people that are very busy and have a lot going on, they might not always have the time to take a picture with you because there's really nothing in it for them. So anytime someone at his stature has the chance to, take a minute, and just that meant a lot to me. And I appreciate Eddie, and I really appreciate all the value that he's bringing. I wrote a blog post about it. I think DAZN is bringing historic value to boxing fans in the United States. I think these live events are bringing huge value. I want to look at dollars to substance. What are you getting for your dollar, and in what the product that DAZN is bringing and these live events are bringing is pretty amazing. So I was at the AJ fight versus Andy Ruiz, and there was no way in heck I was going to bring that up when I met Eddie Hearn. But, again, that was one of the most memorable nights of my life. That is the most incredible sporting event I've ever seen in person by far. I mean, it was the movie Rocky playing out in front of my eyes. And, Matchroom Boxing brought that to me. And I don't have any affiliation with Matchroom Boxing, but I'm going to tell it like I see it. And what they're bringing in terms of value has never been seen before in the United States. And the fact that I got to see Eddie Hearn because I got to the arena early and I got lucky and he was walking by, he happened to be walking by, that is so special to me and a really cool moment. So check out clearcontender.com/podcast and you'll see the picture of me with Hearn posted next to this episode. Or, you can check it out on Twitter at clearcontender or at Casey Talks Life is my personal Twitter. I also thought it was funny. There's obviously huge characters in Providence, Rhode Island. I don't know if you guys have ever seen or listened to the podcast, I believe it's called Crime Town from Giblet Media. Gimlet Media was the podcast company that was recently bought by Spotify, but they put out a really, really interesting podcast called Crime Town about Providence, Rhode Island. You'll get a taste of kind of the characters that exist in the city that I'm from, the city that I love so dearly. So there's obviously a lot of characters and a lot of funny people that come out of Providence. In the whole, Boston, Southern New England, there's a lot of characters from here, and this podcast is dedicated to characters. So I did enjoy my time. I know that there was a moment when the guys behind me were they were trying to bet on some of the outcomes of the fight or like some of the things that would happen, but they said that they was like, we don't have a lot of money to be betting, and so they were like betting push-ups, and they're like, if this happens, you owe me 10 push-ups later. He's like, okay, yeah. So I want to introduce that as a new concept. If you guys are low on funds or you don't like, you're risk averse and you don't like to gamble or bet, which certainly has its own issues that can come with it, I like to introduce the new concept of betting your buddies to do push-ups later. You're gonna owe me 15 push-ups if he doesn't get that knockout in the third, like I said. So they ended up gambling push-ups and sit-ups or whatever with each other. Thought that was hysterical. Characters always welcome in Providence, Rhode Island. So again, I want to give a shout out to Eddie Hearn. I want to give a shout out to Matchroom Boxing. They bring out the production value, man. I love Diamond Dave Diamante. He's the ring announcer who was out there. He was at the AJ fight that I was at, and he was also the ring announcer for the fights this past last night. He's got the braids down to the floor almost. He's a character. He's fun. He's awesome on Twitter. He's funny. Diamond Dave Diamante, he's the future of ring announcing, and he's a throwback to the past. We give a little tip to the cap to Diamond Dave when we do the announcing of introducing me on the podcast, as we like to repeat the surname twice. Demetrius, Andrade. That's a little shout out to Diamond Dave. I think he does an amazing job as a ring announcer. And of course, for the main event, they bring out DAZN brings out Michael Buffer, who they have under contract, and he has his famous tagline, and it certainly gets the arena going. Next month, me and my girlfriend Soroya the Destroyer, who did not make the trip up to Providence with me. I miss you, baby. I hope you're home having fun. We will FaceTime later, as we did earlier this morning. I love you, babe. So me and the Destroyer will be headed to the Gervonta Davis fight at the Royal Farms Arena. That is the city I live in. So couldn't be a better summer for the Characters of Boxing podcast in terms of live events. We've gotten to go to the AJ fight in New York. We were at Demetrius Andrade last night in my hometown of Providence. And then my adopted hometown of Baltimore, Maryland will be the site of July 27th, Gervonta Davis fight, and I expect the Royal Farms Arena will be packed, and I can't wait to tell you guys more about that event. Thank you so much for listening to the Characters of Boxing podcast. There will be a new character profile coming out in the next week or two. I don't want to spoil who it's going to be, but it's going to be a fun one. And this will also be a huge character that I've seen in person. And I have had the chance of, when I was a kid, I saw this guy in a hotel in, I think it was Allentown, Pennsylvania, with my cousin Kyle. And I'm not going to give away who it's going to be, but you got to stay tuned to the Characters of Boxing podcast, because the next character profile is going to be epic, and it's going to be another guy that I had the pleasure to meet in person, and it is going to be hilarious. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining us on the Characters of Boxing podcast. If you got a chance, subscribe to us on iTunes and all that good jazz. And to be honest, man, you got to be watching DAZN. If you don't have this streaming platform, you're missing out on all this awesome production value that my man Eddie Hearn. I know we're not supposed to have favorites in this business. We're supposed to be objective, and I am. And he's bringing us all this value, and what this dude's doing for boxing in the States is truly historic, and I appreciate it. And it was cool as all heck to get a chance to meet the man last night in Providence. Shout out to my cousin Meg, my dad, and Bren. We had an amazing time last night. I love you all, and we will do it again. Next time, we will head to the MMA fights in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and I cannot wait. Guys, this is the Characters of Boxing podcast. Join me on clearcontender.com/podcast to catch up on old episodes, and we will do this again. Have a great day, folks. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Characters of Boxing and Beyond podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Clear Contender Media. For more, visit us on clearcontender.com.